Good evening, everyone. There was once a monk that was looking for a quiet place to meditate. So he went to a lake and found a boat. And he rowed the boat out into the middle of the lake, and he settled in, closed his eyes, and was meditating. After a while, there was another boat that collided into his, and he was immediately annoyed, and he was angry. Who would be so inconsiderate to ram their boat into his boat? And he opened his eyes, and he discovered the other boat was empty. It was a boat that had come loose from the shore and was floating randomly around the lake. And he let go of that anger. He realized there's nothing to be angry about. It's just a random happening. Now, this is an example of flipping the coin. The circumstances were the same. It was one boat collision, but he perceived it in two different ways. The story he told himself about the event changed when he realized there was nobody in the boat. So tonight I'm going to use the metaphor of flipping a coin. Does anybody have a coin in your pocket? I brought a coin. We usually don't carry coins anymore, but it's a useful metaphor because it has two sides. And so it's a useful metaphor for flipping over and seeing things in a different way. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about what adversity is like for us, what it is when we're stressed or struggling with something, and then give you 3 action items that you can use to try to transform your perception of adversity and transform that adversity into an advantage. Before I do that, I'm going to tell you 2 more stories of adversity. And unlike the story of the monk, they're going to actually be true. So imagine what it would be like to lose your eyesight. So let's do a little experiment here for a minute. Close your eyes. Now think, what would it be like for you to leave here and get yourself home without your vision? Okay, you can open your eyes. To me, losing your eyesight is one of the most devastating things I can imagine. Well, this happened to one of my children when they were about 20 years old. They began to lose their eyesight. Before that, they had normal vision or corrective lenses, but nothing extraordinary. And then their retinas began to degrade. And over the next few years, they lost their eyesight completely. And it's so hard as a parent to watch that happen. I was helpless, and the doctors were helpless to stop this. And I just would be devastated, and I was heartbroken for my child. And one day, about a year ago, they told me, they're actually okay that this happened. And I'm like, what do you mean? How can you say that? And they said, well, they've learned to accept that adversity happens in life, and sometimes you can't control it, you have to accept it. And they've learned to love themselves and love their life again. And they decided they were going to enroll in college and pursue education, because after they took a vocational course in life skills for the visually impaired, learning how to read and write Braille, learning how to use accessibility functions on a computer, learning practical things like how do you clean a bathroom when you're blind. And they enrolled in school, and now they're in college, and they want to become be an educator to work with other people who are visually impaired. So this devastating thing that completely changed the trajectory of their life, they found a focus and purpose, and they're dedicating their career towards being of service to others. Okay. Next story is mine. As Travis mentioned, I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD, and this is after completing a PhD. And when I completed a PhD, I didn't feel successful. I felt broken. I left the PhD program with a degree, but I didn't feel good about it. I felt really broken down, and it was a struggle. And I had depression, and I sought treatment for depression. And while I was getting treatment for depression, the therapist told me that she diagnosed me with ADHD. And I started learning about ADHD, attention hyperactivity deficit disorder. And I discovered that it isn't all bad, that, again, this is a coin that you can flip. On one side there are struggles, on the other side there are attributes that can be valuable. So one example is distractibility and difficulty maintaining focus. I discovered that an ADHD brain is an interest-driven brain, and this jumping from one thing to another is a sign of curiosity. And that I've learned that when something interests me, I can do a deep dive and spend hours or days or weeks on a topic. And I've used this in my work in environmental consulting, that when I've encountered a new project or a new situation, new problem, that I can dive deep into it and learn a lot, and I can find patterns, I can figure out connections with things that maybe I hadn't been seen before. I can find new solutions to old problems. So again, there's a coin flip there. So let's talk a little bit about adversity. Adversity is inevitable in life. We had a little bit of adversity here this evening when we were trying to connect, and I've discovered that a skill I need to learn because of that adversity is how to wirelessly connect a PC to an Apple TV. So make a mental note for that. But as I was saying, adversity is inevitable. We all face adversity. And I don't want to, and I'm going to try to present a positive view, an optimistic view of learning and growing from adversity, but I don't want to romanticize it or trivialize it, because sometimes adversity is devastating, it's heartbreaking, it can be traumatic, and there are times to seek support or therapy, or sometimes you need time to heal from it. And so I want to acknowledge that. And I'm going to try to offer an optimistic viewpoint, and I don't want to trivialize it by saying, the glass is half full, look for the bright side. Those platitudes are maybe true, but they're not that helpful. So I'm going to try to give you some things that are more actionable. But when we experience adversity, one of the things that happens is we feel an emotional response often. And that can be paralyzing, because when you have that emotional response, some of the circuits in your brain that are responding to that are the same circuits that respond to physical pain. So you could be paralyzed because it feels like to move forward, your body, your brain is saying don't do it, because the brain thinks you're in danger. You think you're experiencing pain. You're not experiencing physical pain, but you're triggering the parts of your brain that respond to physical pain. So when I learned that was helpful, that I realized that sometimes the emotional response I'm feeling is disproportionate to the actual situation. I recently read something by Viktor Frankl, and he was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor, and he studied the way people survived and dealt with the Holocaust. And he offered a couple insights that I found useful. One, he said that suffering in and of itself is not inherently good or meaningful. Bad things happen, and sometimes they're tragic. But we can choose to find meaning, or we can choose to find ways to grow despite that or because of that. So that's one thing. Now, another thing that happens when we experience adversity, we feel a fight or flight mechanism. And you've probably seen that. Maybe if you didn't know it, if you've seen a nature documentary, some sort of a gazelle or something on a plane, and there's a cheetah that chases it. What happens with that gazelle? Their physiology changes. They become very alert. Their heart rate increases. Their blood pressure increases. There's stress hormones. There's adrenaline that's released. Well, the same thing that happens to us. This is something we share with animals. This is a very old reaction, evolutionary. It's a very good adaptation. It helps preserve us, helps protect us from danger. And if you're out driving on the roads this weekend and the roads are slick and there's a car sliding in front of you and you react, you immediately become defensive, you take evasive action, that's a fight or flight mechanism. That reaction happens faster than you can think about it. And it's a really valuable thing for helping us deal with acute danger. It's not as helpful, it's a little bit of a mismatch for dealing with chronic danger. So let's talk about how we can respond to that. And so this is the first action item to share, is I described some things about physiologically what happens to us when we are confronted with danger or when we perceive danger. So I mentioned several things that we can't voluntarily control. We can't voluntarily control or directly control our blood pressure, our heart rate, or the release of adrenaline or stress hormones in our bloodstream. There is one thing we control, and that is our breathing. When we go into fight or flight, our breathing becomes shallower and rapid. Well, we can actively control our breathing. And I want to lead you through a breathing exercise. And the breathing exercise is to take a long inhalation through the nose and hold it, and then a long exhalation out the mouth and hold it. So let's walk through that. So take a deep inhalation, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold it, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, hold, 2, 3, 4. And repeat that over and over as many times as you need. In doing that, you are taking active control of your breathing. You're slowing down your breathing. A couple of things happen when you do that breathing exercise. When you inhale through your nose, you're warming the air, you are filtering the air, so that helps increase the oxygen intake in your lungs. And when you exhale through your mouth, that helps expel more carbon dioxide out of your lungs. So the two things combined will increase a little bit the concentration of oxygen in your lungs, so that's going to help you deal with this stressful situation a little bit more. The other thing is you're slowing down your thoughts, you're slowing down your body. And the third thing, and I think this is really cool, is when your exhalation is longer than your inhalation, it's sending a signal to your vagus nerve and to the rest of your nervous system that you're safe. Your body automatically was assuming that you're in danger, but when you slow down and breathe like that, you are sending a signal to break the grip of that fight or flight. You are telling your nervous system that you're safe. This gazelle on the last slide that's running across the Serengeti being chased by a cheetah, their breathing is rapid and shallow. But when they can stop, their breathing will return to normal, and then they'll go back to grazing, another day, another cheetah, whatever. We don't respond that way so well. We kind of have to slow ourselves down, and we have a difference between animals, like the prey animals, that we have higher cognitive functions in our brains, so we remember the danger a little bit more. We think about it more, we worry about it, we simmer on it. And so this breathing exercise is a way to break the grip of that fight or flight. So this is the first thing to transform adversity into an advantage, is you got to appreciate that you might be in fight or flight, so break that, slow yourself down. When you slow down, you're not in the grips of that animal side of your nervous system. You can start using your human side of your nervous system to think about it, to find meaning, to grow from it, to process it. Another activity you can do to deal with adversity is journaling. I like to use a hard copy journal and physically write pen on paper. And one of the reasons to do that is because it slows down your thinking. Your mind might be racing. It kind of forces yourself to slow down and think. And using the journal has a great benefit because while you're doing that, you're using your higher cognitive powers to think, to process, to find meaning, to put things into context. You're also processing emotions, so there's a different part of your brain engaged. And then the act of physical writing uses other parts of your brain. So you've got multiple parts of your brain engaged, and that helps gives you a more effective way of processing a situation. Now, if you don't know what to write, you can write about your emotions and just identifying what emotions you're feeling or identifying what the adversity is. It helps a lot to just identify those things. It helps take them out of this amorphous black cloud above your head, like on that previous slide, and create a little bit of order out of them. If you don't know what to write, I'll suggest some questions next. You could ask yourself, what skills does this adversity teach me? Tonight, one of the skills I'm discovering I need is how to cast wireless to an Apple TV. Who am I becoming because of this adversity? And I hadn't really thought about this until I talked to my kid Felix about this, and they decided they wanted to become a teacher for the visually impaired. And then where could this experience be an advantage? So with me and describing ADHD, I was talking about how, it's interest driven, so I can do a deep dive into subjects and learn a lot and retain a lot really quickly. So I'm just like, that's a tool I have. It's something that I can use if I have a new situation, need to learn something new or deal with something. A lot of people with ADHD find that they do well in fast-paced, dynamic environments, creative environments. So people with ADHD are great as first responders because they run to danger because it's so intriguing to them. If you don't want to do the journal part of it, you could just plug these questions into AI with your adversity you're facing and see what it gives you. I tried this with ADHD. It's really interesting. It's great for brainstorming. Thinking about the skills that you can learn, I realized that adversity exposed weaknesses, and I put weaknesses in quotes because they're not really weakness. I mean, what is a weakness? It's a technique you haven't learned, it's a skill that you need to practice, or it's something that's beyond your capability. You can go to the gym and you can learn new exercises, you can practice them, you can gain strength and fitness, but there's still going to be things that are beyond your capacity that no matter how many times you go to the gym, there's weights you just can't weight, you just can't lift yourself. So it's good to recognize those things. So instead of viewing the adversity or your response to adversity as weakness, I think it's better to review it as these are skills that you haven't learned. So what can you do with these new skills? How do you develop and grow these new skills? I recommend view them as opportunities. They're not weaknesses. It's nothing bad that you don't have certain skills. It's an opportunity to learn something new. Try to identify them, articulate what they are, put them on a to-do list. Again, it helps destigmatize them. This is not a weakness, this is not a failure, this is something to learn. There's no shame in that there's new things to learn. Address them one at a time. Don't try to change everything all at once, that's a little overwhelming. So take them on one at a time and make a deliberate practice. If you identify a skill that you need, that you've been exposed or you've realized through adversity or that you realize you need, you make a deliberate practice to develop that skill and seek resources, seek mentoring, and that can be a formal thing, enroll in school or a class or hire a professional coach or mentor, or do it informally, lots of online resources to learn new skills, or surround yourself with other people, a support group or Toastmasters or some other group, people who have that skill or people who are working on that skill so you can learn that skill and you can learn from other people and you can practice that skill. So the coin is a useful metaphor for me, how we can, in all these cases, things I was describing to you, there's a way to see the negative side and the flip side. I like the coin especially, for a lot of reasons, but in regards to the fight or flight, because there's a heads and a tail. And for me, the tail represents sort of our physical body and the way we respond physiologically to things. And then the head side of the coin, it's our higher cognitive powers that allow us to process, to find meaning, to think about things, to find the good side of things. It's easy to flip a coin, especially for the monk in the boat. That's the fictional story. It's very easy to describe a story of flipping the coin. In real life, it's not as easy to flip the coin. I mean, nothing I'm describing is easy, especially as adversity becomes more difficult. But it is possible. So rather than being discouraged and feel like it's too hard, it does take time to flip the coin, but you can flip the coin quickly by making a decision to not focus just on the suffering side of the coin and make a decision to look at the side of the coin that brings growth. So thank you, my friends.